Welcome to the Q.A.C. Team podcast, where we dive deep into the journeys of inspiring business owners, bringing you insights and challenges from the entrepreneurs who are shaping our world. Join us as we explore their paths to success. Now here's your host, Charles Luttrell.
Good evening. My next podcast comes from Covington, Kentucky, and I'm here with Tom. Tom, good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. Welcome to the Q.A.C. Team podcast. Tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So my name is Tom Hull. I have a company, Origin Trade Goods. I make sauces, spice blends, and jerky here in Covington, Kentucky. We do some of it through contract production of my recipes, and some of it made myself. I work with a former sous chef of mine from when I was a chef to make my sauces. I work with another small business to produce jerkies from my recipe, and then I make these spice blends myself. In addition to that, I actually work as a quality manager for a third-party logistics company.
Oh, wow. So you stay busy.
Yeah, very.
Very, very busy, right? So tell us a little bit about, why did you decide to be a business owner? What drove you to this?
The last restaurant that I was a chef for, I was making my own hot sauces there. This was pre-pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And we had planned on selling them. I ended up leaving that restaurant during the pandemic to take some more stable employment.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really lost the urge to do that. I had a background in beverage manufacturing and packaging. I ran breweries for about 8 or 10 years in Cincinnati. And so once, my employment was stable enough and I was in a good place financially and time-wise to do it again,
Mm-hmm.
I decided to move forward with it. So my former sous chef, who got the fun job of, pureeing all those hot peppers and basically just macing himself over and over again while I had him make 5 gallons at a time of hot sauce during the pandemic, had actually gotten the licenses needed to package them
Mm-hmm.
for the state and the FDA. So since I'd already paid him to make my recipes once and he had the licenses needed, I just spoke with him and asked if he'd be open to co-packing. He said yes, and so I got started with the sauces, and then I found out that it was relatively easy for me to get the licensing needed to do my spice blends as well.
Mm-hmm.
Myself, by just renting kitchen space from local businesses. So I did that for that. And then the jerkies actually just kind of happened. I'd been making jerky at home. I'd sold some kind of under the table, but it turns out the USDA is very picky about. So I lucked out and found someone up in Columbus, about an hour and a half away, who was up in operation doing that and open to co-packing on my recipes. So we spent about 6 months or so back and forth getting things to taste like what I'd been making at home. And now I've got those up and running as well. So it was mostly just, you could say partly because I'd always wanted to, and partly to prove that I could. Mm-hmm. Once I'd left the food industry. So
yeah, I got a couple extra questions there. The first one I think you answered. I was curious about, what was the process? How difficult was it to get the packaging? Yeah. That was mm-hmm. my question. Was the packaging? How difficult was that? So the packaging wasn't difficult, but it was a process, right?
Yeah. So it is a process. It's the acidified food process. You can actually take a better processing control school. Offered through many universities, some online, some in person. That is what Kevin, my former sous chef, the owner of Moonbeam Hot Sauce, has. Mm-hmm. I have studied every process in there, but I've never actually taken the formal class. But basically, it's that's what you need for the hot sauces. So what it is making sure that your pH is low enough to be stable, and then you just have to fill hot. And invert the package once you have the label on, so that you use the heat of the hot sauce itself to actually sterilize the packaging.
Wow.
So that one is actually like the process is extremely easy. It's just the government's picky about like, have you gone through specific courses, saying that you know that you're doing it. As far as the spice blends go, those just actually fall under, like at least in the state of Kentucky, pretty basic food manufacturing. They just came and watched me mix them and package them, which are done. They just get packaged in plastic, plastic spice jars with sprinkle caps on top of them and a heat seal like inside, which actually just gets applied by a. It's kind of an electromagnet. So that's why those seals are metal. What they do is you close the lid on with the seal inside it, hold an electromagnet over it for about like 4 seconds for the one that I have, and it actually heats up the seal so that it bonds to the plastic of the jar.
Very, very, very interesting.
And then the jerky gets done in vacuum bags. Requires a lot more. So that company, the person who's making it for me, they have to have a HACCP control, like a HACCP plan in place, hazard and critical control point plan.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I can actually write because of the certifications I have to carry for my other job, like my day job. But I do not have a USDA registration number, which she does. So she actually has the USDA in there twice a day when she's manufacturing to come and check out and make sure that they're doing everything the way they're supposed to. And, they'll ask clever questions to the employees, try to trip them up and everything.
I was going to say they try to trip them up.
Doing something that they're not supposed to.
Right.
Yeah, we actually, so we actually, we get the FDA doing that at my day job. They come by and like they can do like door knocks, make sure that, we're keeping everything closed because we operate one of the facilities that I oversee. We operate as a food grade facility. So basically just the more chance for like any kind of contamination, the heavier the restrictions get. So like dried spices, little to none. Like if moisture got in there, maybe like there could be mold, but for the most part, those are going to be fine. And the hot sauces, the pH is so low that it's not that much of a concern, but they do want them to be packaged aseptically. So that's why you do the heat processing on that. The meat is where it gets real tricky, even down to you can't just dehydrate it. A lot of us, when we do it at home, we just use a dehydrator. And we're like, yeah, this is great. I got beef jerky all the time.
Put it in a sandwich bag.
You do actually, to sell it, you actually have to cook it in an oven to an internal temperature of 165 degrees, held for, I think, 2 minutes. And then after that, they can start the dehydrating process.
Gotcha.
Have to be able to get it up to that temperature within, I think, 2 hours. For it to be considered stable. So there is a lot more in it than I thought there was going to be when I started looking.
Huge process,
which is why I do so much co-packing, because I mean, think about how much money it would cost to start like getting all of those certifications and then the right equipment and everything to do that as well, and dealing with making sure that anyone that you're employing to work with you knows exactly what they're doing and it has the right certifications. It's a lot.
Yeah. From what you're explaining, it's like I'm being mind blown here. It's like, wow, that's a lot more involved than I had even thought.
Yeah, it's wild because you start thinking that you're just going to do it all at home and it's going to be fine, or maybe at the very least rent some kitchen space. But depending on what you're doing, it can get way past there. So
yeah, and I was going to say you're way beyond the whole let's dehydrate it and throw it in a sandwich bag and take it to work and eat it.
Yeah. Oh no, I did that. I did that all the time. And if anyone from the government is listening, I definitely didn't sell anything like that. But,
right. Sorry, folks, we didn't sell anything like that.
Yeah.
Right. So your background was so you worked in a restaurant and you kind of stepped away from that. And, my next question is going to be, so why did you choose, this industry? So tell us a little bit more about that. What made you gravitate towards your sauces and your jerkies and the things that you're doing now?
So honestly, I think part of it was I kind of missed, so don't get me wrong. I loved people coming into the restaurant and feeding them and everything, right? And it's great. But you don't get to see that in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Because you're in a hot kitchen and you have to stay there. to keep making the food, right? Like even
You
when
are
you're
the behind the scenes guy.
yeah, even when you're the chef, like you're not getting out there that much. My style was mostly to. Sorry about any noise. I have a lot of cats.
You're fine.
So my style is I do a lot of prep work. I tend not to work on the line as much, and a lot of what I put together is prep heavy. Hence the sauces, the spice blends, all of that. And I think that a lot of that honestly stemmed from when I was brewing professionally, because like you're making it to package to sell to people. And I think something that I missed was like getting to like enjoy the retail aspect where you can actually talk to the people who are, using your product, like enjoying it.
Yeah.
You don't get to do that as much as a chef. Not to mention the hours are terrible. They're awful, and there's little to no benefits occasionally, aside from like the occasional free shot of whiskey or High Life. So not much going on there. So I think once working with my current employer, I work usually about 37 hours a week. And I have like full benefits. I get paid well, all of that. So I think once I realized that I had time, and like the resources to be able to do this finally, like I'd planned when I was at the restaurant, but I worked 100 hours a week. So when was I ever realistically going to package anything? It just seemed like the right thing to do. Like, I don't know, who knows if the company will be around forever, but like I wanted to at least give it a shot and prove that I could do it, pull it off, and see if people like the product. I knew my friends that I gave the product to liked it, but it's an entirely different thing when you're, up and running and selling. So I think that was it.
Yeah.
Like, just
I think that's
show
the
that I
thing,
can.
right? Yeah, I think that's the thing, where a lot of people, they get these ideas when it comes to food, and like, oh, I got this great idea, and then the friends and family, oh, everybody loves it, and they taste the thing, it's great, but then when you start reaching out and getting, other opinions from strangers, that's when things kind of hit people, right? It's not as good as I thought it was,
And like a lot of what I did professionally brewing was recreating old recipes. So I don't know if you're familiar with Little Kings, a tiny beer in a green bottle. It's old historic beer. But I actually had to recreate that recipe essentially when I was working at my last brewery, because we owned it and we didn't want to contract brew it anymore.
Gotcha.
So I remember getting handed this like decades old recipe with no units of measure on it, like anything, right? And like types of malt that probably are not even in production anymore. Like no one's making that stuff. Those maltsters might not even be around anymore. But the fun challenge, and it was a fun challenge for any beer that we had been making when I took over, that I had to make like minor reformulations to, or any new beers that I did, wasn't just coming up with something that like, did it taste good to me, but did other people enjoy it? And most importantly, did they enjoy it enough to pay for it?
Absolutely.
Because your friends will love your food, but your friends loving your food enough to pay for it is an entirely different thing.
It's a whole
like
different
everybody loves
game.
it when it's free, man. Like,
right.
But yeah, so that's been an interest. Like, that was definitely like an interesting part of it. But I had fun with it, and I had a background that had taught me how to fine tune recipes. Now it also helps. I have friends locally here who work for like some of the largest flavor producers in the world as flavor compound developers. So I mean, my bar conversation a lot of the time is literally just on how to like create the right flavors, either in food or drink or whatever any one of us is working on at any given time.
Right. So you have a little bit of a competitive advantage, a little bit of edge, right?
a little bit on that. But like in the end, it still comes down to the whole reason I do it is because like I started doing it because I wanted to make stuff for my friends.
Yeah.
And now I'm just making more friends who also happen to give me money, which is tight.
It's a great trade-off, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
absolutely.
I mean, when I do farmers markets or festivals or anything, there's still a sign up for my social media, and it just says being friends is tight. And then it's just a QR code for Facebook and Instagram. So like, it's still, the whole point of all this is to, do something nice for people. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out if I can say something like, cook good food for people. Penzies, please don't sue me, because I'm pretty sure that's their slogan. But like, it's
No
a good
lawsuits,
slogan,
please. Right.
and it carries for a reason, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, no, I get it, man. That's that's fascinating, and I love that's why I love what I do. I love talking to people who, create something from nothing. They have an idea, and they're like, "Well, I was doing this before. Let's work on this and see what I can do with this." And here you are,
Yeah.
doing something that you love to do.
And I can say it definitely helps working in third party logistics, because, like, you know, it is nice being able to order a pallet of bottles and just have it dropped off at the warehouse that I have my office at, like my main office at.
Is that so
That
cool, man? Yep.
that is very convenient, and I have to give a shout out to my boss Brent for like being very cool about that. He just kind of, there's like a little tiny corner of the warehouse, and he's like, okay, that's just your space. Do what you need to with it.
There's Tom's corner.
Yeah. So, sometimes it's empty bottles, sometimes it's full bottles of sauce. Like, sometimes it's a bunch of stuff from my food pop-ups, like equipment and everything, that I'm like, I don't have time to get this into the basement right now, so it's going here.
That is awesome. You have a great boss, man.
Yeah, he's a really good guy.
That's awesome. So my next question is going to be tied to a little bit about when you first started talking about, the quality control and stuff. So tell us a little bit about what were some of the challenges that you faced, creating this sauce business and your beef jerky.
Yeah. We'll go with the sauce first. So, sauces, especially from a quality control standpoint, right? Standardization is the biggest thing when you are selling something, like, and that applies to any product. In the case of a food product, your biggest threat to that is going to be your ingredients. Like, can you get the same ingredient, same quality all the time? So, I actually had plans for like very wide and varied types of sauces to start with, until I realized like I was going to have to source all those different peppers, all those different vegetables, like all differently, like all the time, right? Year round.
Yeah.
And I was not going to have the buying power. Like, I can't afford to buy like totes of that, or like have it shipped in when it's out of season.
Right.
So that meant finding a solution that was going to work for that. What I ended up doing was finding a company in Georgia that produces fermented pepper purees and has a wide selection of pepper offerings. So I buy those, and I can buy those in 5-gallon drums right now, eventually, hopefully like 55-gallon ones. But I can keep them refrigerated indefinitely, because they're already packed, like they're already designed for long-term storage.
Right.
So that lets me maintain the consistency of my product. So, but that also meant not buying 5 different hot peppers types. I primarily work with 3 types of pepper, and I keep those purees in stock for whenever I need them. And then I buy other things fresh, like my onions, bell peppers, like carrots, that kind of thing. The stuff that I can get, like that you can get that way.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then another pitfall that a lot of people fall into is, are you spending too much money on a product? Which can be difficult to tell, because obviously you want to buy the best quality to put in it, right?
Sure.
But I would encourage anyone to take that economy level brand on something, right? Like, definitely not on like fruit or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about vinegar and you're using it to make hot sauce, you probably don't need to buy the like premium brand vinegar. I would very, very much encourage anyone to do blind side-by-sides with that and what you can get at like your local Restaurant Depot.
Right.
At the cost of like, $8 a gallon versus 14.
Right.
I would bet that you are not going to find any difference. I've done it both ways. And the only difference that I found was that I was able to offer at a slightly better price point.
That's very interesting.
Because I had just been passing on the cost of an unnecessarily pricey ingredient to my customers.
And that's what I was going to say, right? So that's an unnecessary cost that you pass on
Right.
to the people who are buying your
That is
product.
like,
Right.
yeah, and money is tight for everyone right now. So that costs, like, you can make the best product out there, but if you cannot stay competitive in your market with your pricing, it's not going to matter.
Right.
So, I've got some great ideas for sauce, and I've priced them out. There's stuff that I used to do in my restaurant and everything. I'd be looking at $20 a bottle. It's not going to sell. So can't really do that, My buffalo sauce is incredible. It is so much butter. Like, unless somebody wants to pay like $20 for a 6 to 8 ounce bottle of buffalo sauce, it's not going to happen. Butter's expensive, man.
Happen, right? You and I both know that's not
butter's expensive as hell. It's just not going to work.
Right.
But so like that, you have to look at things like that. And which I think is another thing that people fall into. I saw it happen a lot in the beer industry, right? So like it's probably around like 2011, the sour beer industry is going nuts, which was also a nightmare from like, that could be an entirely different episode. Nightmare from a quality standpoint.
Like the nightmares of the
destroy those microbes get into things and they do not move out. It's like the crust punk that moved into your basement after a show. Like you're just never getting rid of them. But so like around that time, I remember I was working in a brewery that made sour beer, and the ongoing discussion was always, how much can we get away with charging for this stuff?
Yeah.
Which was wild because the beer itself, cheap as far as materials go, right? Like they're very cheap beers to make. They're low ABV. You deliberately use stale hops. It's wild. The only cost is do you have enough floor space to store them for like a year to 3 years? Gotcha. And I remember seeing my bosses attempt to charge, I think it was $25 a bottle for one that we'd aged for 3 years. And I was like, that's not going to work, man.
It's not going to work.
Like, no. The highest we've gotten on anything else has been like 10, maybe 15. It's not going to work. And they're like, they'll buy it. Everybody, like, nobody cares. People will just throw money at this. It sat around forever, and we had to discount it in the tapper.
Yeah.
So you have to be cognizant of what people are going to pay. And the best way to do that is to, try to get your hands on some empirical data. Like, can you get your hands on trend, price trend reports for your category and just see where it's been and where it is now? And that'll tell you, like, do you need to match your competitors, or can you go a little bit over, or do you need to undercut? So it gets wild. I think that's probably one of the biggest issues people run into, and they all factor back into quality control. If you don't sell, your product doesn't move, it starts getting past code. You have to start actually worrying, like, do I have old product on the shelf? Because it's not just what do you have in your basement ready to go. Right. It's, do you have accounts with product that is now past code that, to maintain that account, you might have to do a buyback on.
Gotcha.
So like quality control, it's wild. A lot of people think that like they're paying attention to it, and they think of it just in terms of their ingredients and their manufacturing processes. But it carries so far past that. Like, what's your recall policy? How are you going to handle tracking your inventory? How do you know if someone has inventory that you need to go try to buy back and replace with fresh?
Yeah.
So are you going to be able to get them to let you buy it back and replace with fresh? Or they're just going to say it didn't sell and we don't want anything to do with this anymore?
And then you don't have a viable business anymore.
Exactly.
You can't sell it.
It's very big. It's and like a fully holistic understanding of quality control is honestly one of the best things. That if you don't have it, find someone who does, that you can at least talk to. I know everyone gets confused that's my day job, because when I talk about what I do, it's mostly in like systems and setting up procedures and all of that stuff. I'm like, well, so here's the thing. Like, I don't do the nitty gritty fine detail quality control. Like, it's my job to make sure that we have the resources we need to actually even be able to approach those issues. So that's where it can get weird. And I think from a quality standpoint, that's probably the biggest thing I would advise people to pay attention to, is to understand how anything outside of just the manufacture of their product still affects the actual quality of their product and the quality of their business's image in general.
Right. Yeah, because you've got the product itself. It's got to be consistent. You got to bottle it. You got to package it. It's got to look good. It's got to taste good.
Yeah.
And it's got to sell. That right
and
there that's a stressful process.
Yeah, and again, these are all things. Oh, and get proofs. Get proofs of everything you're going to print. Like, I cannot stress that enough. I'll throw a quick shout out. I use a company called Online Labels. They're right over in Indiana. They get me super fast shipping just because it's close by. But they're fantastic, and I think proofs from them are like $15 or $20. That 15 or 20. If you can't spend that $15 or $20 to see a printed copy of your label in front of you, you're not ready. You're not ready to label anything.
Yeah.
And like that's one where you can't skimp on price, because your label, it's not just about how it looks when you put it on, it's how it's going to look like 3 months later. Right. So like, what are the conditions you're going to put it in? Like, you can't just go like matte paper if it's going to be in a refrigerator. Like that's a moist, like a wet condition. So that's where you have to go with like more like a polymer base, like so that it can actually hold up, like more similar to like a beer, like a self-adhesive beer label, not the old like paper ones that you sit there in the bar and you peel off, so that who to use. But the newer ones that you see, or like bumper stickers, I've seen that material getting fairly popular too. That's what one of my local printers uses. But it's like, those are all things you have to pay attention to. So, and like, that's where it comes back to, like, did you take some time to like cross compare some components of whatever you're making it with, and figure out like, okay, do I need the Cadillac version, or like, is the Ford fine? Because it lets me spend some money on my, customer facing label.
Right.
I need to look good for however long this is going to sit on the shelf.
On the shelf,
now,
in the fridge.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're selling cookies, they're going to be gone in 2 days, man. Like, I wouldn't even invest in like ink printed labels, or like I would get a thermal printer and direct thermal and just put something on there that meets the government requirement, because no one's buying a cookie to eat it 2 weeks later. Like,
we're talking days.
Maybe some cookies, but like, you can't sell those in all the states. So
yeah, that's crazy. I never thought about that. Something as simple as a label on the bottle. Oh man, that's a whole other ball of stress.
Yeah, another one that came from brewing. The second brewery I worked at used paper labels, like paper labels in a glue applicator, and condensation, if over time, damages the structural stability of those labels, which is why you pick them off with like your thumbnail. The brewery I'd worked at prior to that used for some of our stuff, we even did foil back labels, but they were all these self-adhesive labels, so those have to be made with a more durable product. So now it sucks trying to put them on, because if you miss, then you just have a giant crease running down your label.
Right.
And they don't like to come off. Like, once they're on there, that adhesive stays. So, but yeah, so like even down to a label can get wild.
Yeah. So you got product, you got consistency, you got to make sure it holds up to elements, bottling, labeling, packaging. Wow, it's a process, isn't it? It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you got to make sure like, don't overproduce. Like, it literally all comes back to the quality of your product.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Any one of these can negatively impact the quality of your product, which is guaranteed to negatively impact your business.
Yeah.
So,
and then if you can't get it packaged right, labeled right to sell it, and nobody buys it, now you have all this money invested in time with no ROI at all.
Yep.
No ROI. Wow.
Yeah. One of the reasons why, the products I chose have extremely long shelf lives.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. Is Is there like a general time from
Yeah.
shelf life on these types of products?
Yeah. So I tell people a year, right? That covers me from like an insurance standpoint.
Mhm.
Realistically, like you're talking low pH, like so anything that is like hot sauce, right? It's very low pH, kept refrigerated. You're looking at a long, long time.
Mhm.
I've eaten hot sauce that was in my fridge for like 2 years, no
Mhm.
problems. You can tell when it's bad. The color starts to fade. The heat fades. Like the compounds that keep it, safe to eat are starting to fade.
Yeah. Yeah.
For jerky, again, a year. I guess it could be more, but like I wouldn't eat meat that was more than a year old, even if it's jerky.
Yeah.
Don't think I could get myself to do it.
What
Yeah, I
kind
just
of
don't think I
a,
could. Like,
think
not
so?
unless it was like some kind of like weird like pickled thing, I guess.
Right.
And then spice blends, like they're fine. I don't really know that you put like. I don't even think I'm like obligated to have an expiration date for the spice blends
Uh-huh.
because they're just completely dried out, and eventually, if they get old enough, like some moisture can get in there, they'll just turn into a brick, right?
Right.
We've all had that happen, and
We see it with brown
depending
sugar,
on what
right?
school of
That's a
thought you
perfect
come from, and
example,
you
right?
throw it away or you throw it at the wall a couple times until it breaks apart. Like, hey, I got garlic powder again. Like,
Right. It's
but
kind of like
either way, at that
brown
point,
sugar,
right,
right?
it's
I
not
was just
for
mentioning that,
you. Like, it's probably time to get new. So, I mean, spice blends, I'm gonna say keep them. So, if you're buying good stuff, right, like the stuff I make, that's not like heavily processed, keep it out of the sun. It will literally bleach and start losing flavor. I learned that at a festival that had me facing due west this
Uh-huh.
year, and I had a jar of spice blend out for people to check out. And when I went to pack up, there was a stripe of just white spices down the
Wow.
middle where the sun had been hitting it.
Uh-huh.
So keep it out of the sun. Generally, like cool and dark is a great way to store all of this stuff. It's going to help it stay fresh. But for the spice blends, just keep it dry, keep it sealed up. And I sell like 2 ounce like jars of it, so it's not going to go bad on you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that like conceivably you could probably use for as long as you wanted.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Who would have thought, right?
I mean, like yes and no, because like the whole reason we started doing this, like drying all this stuff out, was to store it when we didn't have refrigeration. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, our health guidelines are more stringent now, but when it comes down to it, like we dried things out, we picked them, and we acidified them so that we could survive the winter. So
Right.
they're going to be pretty durable.
Right. Yeah, that's a pretty intense process and some very steep challenges that you have to go through to maintain what you do.
Yeah, it was,
Yeah.
interesting getting used to. Once you know what you're doing, like it's very easy.
Mm-hmm.
And again, too, I cannot recommend this enough. Co-packing is great, especially when you want to start a business and you don't exactly know what you're doing. You don't have anywhere near as much upfront investment because the upfront investment is what does it cost to get your first run done,
Mm-hmm.
your run produced.
Gotcha.
You'll end up learning while you're doing it. Just maintain a good relationship with your co-packer, and you can learn from them the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a ton about I knew what I was doing with my spices and my hot sauces when I got started, but like I learned a ton about jerky.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
and it really helps with your personal time. And I think that's one of the biggest things that people starting a business need to remember. We've all heard about the glorifications of the grind culture and like all that. Um, you're on this planet once, man.
Yeah.
And me, I don't want to wait until I'm 80 to enjoy my life. I know a lot of people, people I've worked for, people who are friends of mine who have their own businesses, and they're just like go, go, go all the time. And they're like, yeah, one day it'll be worth it. I'm like, man, we're in our 40s. Like, when's it going to be worth it? you know?
Yeah, right.
And co-packing, is great. So you help a manufacturer by using them for co-packing because you're taking up downtime in their production schedule.
Yeah, yeah.
Making their you're helping them be more profitable and not lose they're not leaving money on the table with time that they're not producing something and getting paid.
Yeah.
For you, what's your time worth? Yeah, if you learn to do it all yourself, right? You get a loan, you get your equipment, you can probably hit a slightly better margin doing it all yourself. But now that's your job, or you have two jobs because you're insane, and I've been there.
Right.
And you're doing all this, but you end up with no friends and no family. And I don't mean that loosely. I did that when I was brewing, and I ended up divorced and starting over my life in my 30s.
Yeah.
It's great now. I love my I love my friends that I have now and everything. It's great now. But I can tell you, it was not for a few years there. So your personal time has a huge dollar value on it.
Yeah.
And that's the other big pitfall for people who start their own business and who own it is they get so obsessed with gotta prove that I gotta make it work, gotta keep getting more successful without any actual end goal for that in mind. And then they just start losing the important things in their life.
Yeah. Yep.
And I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. And what am
I going to do rich and alone at 70 or 80 years old?
Right.
I'd rather, enjoy my time with my girlfriend and my friends now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. And what a great segue into, the next question here is, what are your expectations for your business in the next year or two? Because we don't want to work forever. We don't want to be stuck like we're doing. So we want to enjoy our life.
I have no idea. The first year was pretty good, and this year has been relatively good. There was a hiccup. I somehow got appendicitis in my 40s.
Oh wow!
Do not recommend. Do not recommend. But so that obviously threw some things off. I had to cancel some events, some pop-ups, some festivals and everything, and threw off some release schedules for new products. But so as far as expectations, I don't know. The expectation is to make cool food products and hopefully people enjoy them, and work on my cookbook. Financially, the expectation is to continue to not lose money, which is tight. And then, hopefully see some great growth. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
But the purpose of all of this for me, I don't want to quit my day job. I like my day job and it pays well and it's got great benefits. So I can have a great boss. So
I don't want to.
He's extremely supportive of this too. If I need time off to work on this stuff, I get it. It's
yeah.
As long as my work's done, he's happy. So the entire purpose of this is one, to be fun, and two, to make money to make mine and my girlfriend's lives a little more comfortable.
Yep.
Money towards down payment on the next house so that we can rent out the absurdly tiny one that I own that we're living in right now. 2 people, 4 cats, and 600 square feet. It is wild.
That's gotta be insane.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. There's 3 of them in the room with me right now, and they're all staring at me I
owe them money. At you what are you doing?
Yeah. But yeah, so things like that, or being able to go on vacations. My sister lives in Scotland. We'd like to go visit her.
Oh, that would be awesome,
that's what this is for. And then beyond that, I don't know, max out my 401k contributions. And then after that, max out my HSA account contributions, because apparently that's a legal thing I can do for retirement because tax codes are wild. So
and that's a whole other topic, isn't it? Talking about tax. I don't want to get into that.
Yeah, that's some other good advice.
I don't want to get into that.
Taxes. Just pay someone to do your taxes.
Pay someone, absolutely.
That's the extent of my advice. I am good at doing my own, but my mom was a tax attorney, and when people ask my advice on it, I just say, go to H&R Block. You can pay them.
Get somebody to do it for you, right? Yep.
Yeah. Or if
Well,
you know someone local, support a local business. But like,
yeah,
don't do it yourself.
Yep. That was, that was going to be, to go back a little bit, that was going to be my my little question to that was, were you planning on quitting your day job? But it sounds like you love what you do. You want to just
No,
continue what you have and just steady the course and just keep making more growth from what you're doing. Yeah, that's great.
Wild. My friend Nate also has a like hot sauce company in Covington, right? There's like 5 of us. It's so weird for like a small Northern Kentucky town.
Mm-hmm.
But so his company, and like he went full time with his company this year, like this past year, and it's been going great. And he's getting in all over the country in like chain retail stores. He's got like him or like 1 or 2 other people at like markets and festivals and everything, like 4 to 5 times a week. And like it's going great for him, and I'm super happy for him. But I remember when he asked me, he was like, yeah, it took me like a few years, but like, I'm sure you can get there too. I'm like, dude, I don't want to do that. And he's like, what? I'm like, no, dude.
Like, you're like, nope, not me. That's not for me.
I don't want it. Like, man, I have helped, like, I have done the, like, bring like 2 people's breweries up. I did the, like, open someone else's like restaurant. And each time, like just kind of like resetting at least a little bit on like the career growth and the pay and the benefits. And like, I'm 41. I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
I have a job. It pays well. The benefits are good. So I'm going to stick with that for my day job.
There you go. Right. Yep. So how do our listeners contact you, and how do they find you?
Yeah. So you can find me on Facebook. It is just facebook.com/Origin Trade Goods. Same thing for Instagram. And then there is the website, which is www.origintradegoods.com. And I can be reached at tom@origintradegoods.com or through message through Facebook or like messaging through Facebook or Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
If you're local to Covington too, there are places where you can go pick it up in stores. So
awesome. Yeah. Have you jumped on the TikTok trend yet?
Man, okay. So like I want to so bad. TikTok is confusing to me on the creation side. I just don't quite get it. And how to like what makes things engaging. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
So I know a guy locally who's very good with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to be at the point where I can just pay him.
Yeah.
To help with that. We've talked a little bit. We have some good ideas. I would love to do like segments where I just teach a random person to cook with my ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone who doesn't have any cooking experience at all. Just like, okay, man, here's how you we're going to teach you to make jambalaya. You need my hot sauce and my Cajun seasoning, and let's go.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah.
And so I'd love to do that. And he seems to think it would be great for like TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, I'm going to make one myself. And it was like 10 minutes later, and my girlfriend looked at me. She's like, what's going on, baby? I'm like, I might be old.
I'm old.
I don't understand TikTok. And she's just like, honey. Like, I'm like, I am old. You said, oh, honey. Like, you just want to say yes. Like,
right. That's funny.
So I do want to get on there. Everything I've seen is that TikTok is fantastic for monetizing.
Yeah.
Which sounds great. I'm like, I just switched to Spotify for hosting or Shopify for hosting. So I am trying to teach myself their, social media channels sales.
Okay.
So far, it's going about as well as TikTok.
Right.
If you really want to buy stuff, please use the website. It doesn't confuse me.
Right. Stick to the website, guys. That's great. Oh man, Tom, I really
I'll find a 28-year-old to teach me the rest of it. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I appreciate the detail on your business and telling your story, and it's just been a really fun podcast. The last thing, would you like to offer a discount to our listeners?
I would. It is going to be Q.A.C. 15.
Awesome.
and that will get 15% off for the, I don't know, like 4 weeks from when this airs. So
Awesome. Appreciate it. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Is there anything else I can answer for you?
Let's see. One of the things I like to do is what's one takeaway, one thing you want to leave our audience with out of all the things that we talked on in the podcast? Give us one final thought.
It's supposed to be fun.
I love it.
If you're trying to get paid and not have fun, you can do that without investing your money by going to work for someone else who needs to hire people.
Else. Yeah.
So it's supposed to be fun. If it stops being fun, either give up, like either just close or like sell your business if it's successful enough.
Right.
But there's no reason to put yourself through this much stress if you're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah. I tend to say a lot is if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. You know.
That is definitely true. Yeah. I think a lot of people confuse that with like, well, I loved doing this, so like that's like what I'm going with. And I'm like, no, you have to still love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
To not feel like you're working. Absolutely. So it's not fun. Now you just have a very stressful day, like a very stressful job, that can actually cause you to go into bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's true.
And you know, working for someone else can't put you in bankruptcy. So that would be my biggest takeaway. It's supposed to be fun. And if it's not, it's time to stop. Like,
yeah. Such a great point. Yeah, that's awesome. Yep. Well, Tom, again, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Love chatting with you. It's been a great experience.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll chat soon. Appreciate the time. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you so much, Tom. Take care. You've been listening to the Q.A.C. Team Podcast with your host, Charles Luttrell. Connect with us on the web at QACteam.com, Facebook and Instagram at QAC.team. Thanks for listening.